There's many ways to have a breakthrough. Scientifically, psychologically, spiritually. When an author's story involves one of these, you can usually tell which flavour you're going to get by the tone of the book. Not so much with The Breakthrough by Daphne du Maurier. It's an ambiguous story that turns into a heady blend of pseudo-sci-fi with hints of supernatural horror, all artfully holding you in suspense. Daphne was born in London in 1907, passing away in 1989. The Breakthrough was first published in 1966, and this version is from the Penguin Modern Classics box set. We're thrown into a first-person narrative from the perspective of Stephen Saunders. We'll call him Saunders since he canonically can't abide being called Steve. He's an electrical engineer in London, and his boss tells, not asks, tells him the company is sending him to go work for a few months with some disgraced crackpot scientist, Maclean, who's an old friend of the boss's. This story's written in the 60s, so I'm guessing workers' rights were thin, as in no requirements for lawful and reasonable transfer, no adequate notice periods, no assessing the transfer's impact on personal life. Just straight up, hierarchical, do as you're told approach. I would not have survived. Mad scientist Maclean, aka Mac, has a government research grant and needs an electrical engineer to assist with the experiments and the research he's got going on. Saunders' boss apparently doubles as the office gossip, and he tells Saunders that Mac lost the love of his life when they were younger, which might be why he's cracked. Literally within 2 days of this, Saunders is on a train to a far-flung place called Saxmere, which I tried to look up, but is apparently a fictional village placed somewhere in Suffolk, England. It's bucketing down when Saunders arrives at Saxmere's nearest station. He's craving a little pick-me-up, and he eyes a jaunty local establishment across the road called The Three Cocks. This place isn't relevant to the rest of the story at all, but what a name. The pub's siren song is rudely interrupted by a car pulling up. A happy young lad called Ken pops out and confirms if that's Saunders he sees, and he'll take him on to Saxmere. Saunders is clearly an introvert. His attempts at snarky, sarcastic remarks during the drive fall short of his intentions to take Ken's friendliness down a peg or two, though the failing may also be due to Ken's indomitably positive spirit. As a side note, I suspect the introversion stems from Saunders being autistic, which is only plausible because the story is set right around the time when autism was invented. Any earlier in this would have been an impossible thought. Whatever the case, Ken tells Saunders he also works at Saxmere as one of Mac's guinea pigs. Saxmere itself is essentially deserted. They pull up to the gate of where they're staying and are greeted by a bloody great German shepherd called Cerberus, who despite his name is a friendly chap just like Ken. In the distance, against the skyline and a backdrop of heavy grey cloud, Saunders can see a square, squat tower topped with the curving spiral of an old radar dish. He thinks to himself his worst forebodings could not have conjured up a more forbidding place. The situation couldn't be more mad scientisty coded if it tried. Or could it? Ken gives a tour of the personal and the common rooms, which are described as small and like a military hospital. Just before dinner, Saunders finally meets the infamous Mac, who's tall, craggy and pale, with light blue eyes, which Saunders associates with drunkards, criminals, and fighter pilots. And also, in his view, these three attributes frequently combine. We're also introduced to Dr. Robbie, who looks sallow, bespectacled, and squat, with huge sweaty pit stains. Mac greets Saunders and is all, I hope Ken's looked after you. Shitty night. Heard plenty of good things about you. Will make your visit memorable. It's Stephen, right? Let's say Steve then. And because the act of correction is a high-demand social action that clashes with Saunders' need for social comfort in that moment, he doesn't correct him. My case for his autism is building. After dinner, Mac takes him to see the rest of the place. They walk through a soundproof door into a cold room that looks like it's half a doctor's clinic, half a laboratory. There's an operating table illuminated by an overhead light, and against the wall, there's specimen jars behind glass panels, giving it a clinical but eerie atmosphere. Mac says this is Dr. Robbie's department, and he can do anything from developing a virus to taking out tonsils. They go through to an adjoining electrical room, and this gets Saunders' nerd juices flowing. If that's not an indication of a special interest, what is? Here Mac presents 3 machines, neatly named Charons 1, 2, and 3. Charon 1 has a state-of-the-art voice mechanism. It's able to reproduce voices perfectly and without hesitation. After a demo, Saunders is flabbergasted. He wonders how Mac's done it when they'd tried this sort of thing at his company and thought they'd reached the limits of what was achievable. Charon 1 has blown their work out of the water. And look, I know we live in a world where there's deepfake AI that can reproduce anyone's voice now, but remember, this was the 60s. Mac clocks Saunders' nerd out, and he divulges he's using Charon 1's capabilities in hypnosis experiments. Experiments he hasn't quite got around to disclosing to the government just yet. Next is Charon 2. This is the technology the government is interested in. The machine focuses sound frequency so it can be aim and smash stuff, kind of like when a fighter jet breaks the sound barrier and smashes windows. But this can be controlled. Mac explains smashing stuff isn't the only thing Charon 2 can do. He's been able to set frequencies humans can't hear and train animals to obey commands with them. He's actually trained Cerberus, the German Shepherd, this way. Shockingly, he reveals he's also trained a little mentally disabled girl from down the road to be attuned to certain frequencies that adults can't hear. And here's where Mac gets into what he's actually about. He doesn't give a flying fig about what the government wants. He's got his own agenda. And that's harnessing energy, human energy. Mac says human contain an electrical force, which he calls Force 6, and it's how he explains phenomena like telepathy, precognition, and all the so-called psychic mysteries. And all this energetic potential is wasted. Our intelligence dies, but not the spark of life. His insane take is that he reckons the reason there's reports of paranormal activity is because disabled people can't control their electrical impulses, creating hauntings when it's released in some way. He also reckons Nikki's Force 6 is especially strong because not only does she have a mental disability, but she had a twin sister, Penny, who died a couple of years prior, and now Nikki has a double share of Force 6 from her twin. Mac also explains the happy-go-lucky Ken has leukemia and about 3 months to live. When the time of death comes, he wants to catch Ken's Force 6 using the Charons. His coup de grace is in the third and final machine, Charon 3. The machine he's created to harness Force 6. Mac calls his work Operation Styx, and he needs Saunders' help to operate the Charons. The way Operation Styx will be executed when Ken's time's up is Charon 1 will put Ken and Nikki into a state of hypnosis. Mac's facilitated a psychological link between the two through ongoing hypnosis sessions. Charon 1 can set Ken's mental state back to when he was 5, Nikki's age, and the two play together. In this state, Nikki can communicate what's happening as Ken dies. Then, at the final moment, Charon 3 will guide Ken's Force 6 into itself. That's right, Mac's cooking up soul gems decades before Bethesda even existed. Understandably, this whole conversation leaves Saunders confused AF. Ken looks so full of vitality you wouldn't think he only had 3 months left to live. He needs to sleep on it. After all, he's just an unwitting electrical engineer whose boss forced him into a cursed group assignment. The next morning he's like, hell nah, get me out of here. Mac's cracked. And he goes to see Mac to tell him so, but the crafty bugger is one step ahead of Saunders. Mac's all, come have a look at Charon 1. I don't know what's wrong with it and I need your help figuring it out. It's a trap. Saunders only has to touch Charon 1 and his special interest cranks up to a hyperfixation. He falls in love with the supreme beauty and efficiency of the machine, thinking to himself, beauty may be an odd word to use when electronics are concerned. I did not find it so. Herein lay my passion, all my feelings. This was my life's work. I was not interested in the uses to which the machines I helped to develop and perfect were ultimately put. My part was to see that they fulfilled the function for which they were designed. Charon 1 awakened something else in me. I had only to handle those controls to know what I wanted now was to have a detailed knowledge of all the working parts. Nothing else mattered. I rest my case for an autistic Saunders, and with this, he's all in on Mac's shady shit. They work away. Saunders witnesses hypnosis sessions with Ken and Nikki every other day. The two are getting along famously, nattering away, happy as Larry. They're mostly oblivious to their connection when they're taken out of hypnosis. After about 3 months, the government call and say they want to come inspect the work. D-Day for the extracurricular experiments is getting real close, so Saunders goes to London to head them off. When he returns to Saxmere, Ken has taken a turn for the worst and only gets worse the following day. Mac says it's all systems go for Operation Styx. It's Force 6 harvesting time, baby! And this is where shit gets real. Ken's on the precipice of death when Charon 1 hypnotizes him. His eyes have sunk so far into his head he's barely recognizable. While he can still talk, Charon 1 asks him how he feels. His voice, flat and hollow, tells him he's cold, so cold. He's standing by a tunnel, or perhaps the wrong end of a telescope. There are figures that look so small. Charon 1 takes him back to when he was 5 and Ken whimpers, saying, I don't feel well, I don't want to play. When Nikki's put under, she's asked about Ken. She says, he's sick and crying. He doesn't want to play. day. He won't talk. He's going to say his prayers. After this, Saunders, Mac, and Dr. Robbie faintly hear Ken recite a garbled prayer before he slips into a coma. Nikki's asked to follow Ken. She won't. It's too black, too long. Ken won't wait for her. She's crying. Mac goes and turns on Charon 3. Nikki curls up into a fetal position. Dr. Robbie says, it's happening. Mac watches the signals on Charon 3's monitor intently. They're faint, fading away, until suddenly they surge into an incredibly strong signal just as Robbie declares Ken's dead. After the surge, Charon 3's monitor shows a signal pulsing rhythmically, up, down, just like a heartbeat. Staring at it, Mac says, we've done it! My God, we've done it! Mac wants to know what Nikki can see now. Through Charon 1, he asks her to stay with Ken. Tell them what happens. She uncoils from the fetal position and starts rocking back and forth. In a sharp, high-pitched voice, she says, he wants you to let him go. That's what he wants. Let go. Let go. Let go. As she's becoming more distressed, the pulse on the screen of Charon 3 intensifies, moving faster and faster. Saunders can't take any more of this. He directs Charon 1 to snap Nikki out of hypnosis. She immediately quietens to her usual self, asks to go to the bathroom, and picks her nose. Mac's fuming that Saunders shut shit down before asking more questions of Nikki. He wants to get her back and hear what she says with further interrogation. But Dr. Robbie returns from taking her to the toilet and says he's sent her home. Saunders is confused about what's just happened. How could Nikki maintain her connection with Ken after his body was lifeless? Not particularly quick on the uptake, he finally puts 2 and 2 together. Mac, what if that pulse isn't just energy, isn't just force-6, but is Ken? Mac's like, maybe. I'd like to know more, but some idiot broke Nikki out of her hypnosis before she could tell us. The next day, Dr. Robbie reports Nikki is in a catatonic state. She's rocking back and forth, not eating. Mac decides to fire up Charon 2 and see if he can't get Nikki attuned enough to its frequency to talk. It works. She phones him after hearing the signal, and she tells him she can hear a clock ticking all around. She doesn't like it. Ken doesn't like it. Penny doesn't like it. Yeah, that's right. The dead twin doesn't like the ticking. Mac hangs up. While he's speaking with Nikki, Ken's Force-6 is going crazy on Charon 3. Mac's hell-bent on getting Nikki back for more questions. He has to know more. But they're interrupted by another phone call. Government representatives have arrived. They say Saunders' predecessor had reported experiments on a dying kid. They demand an inspection immediately. Saunders tries to hold them off, but they insist on speaking with Mac. Saunders looks for him, only to find him in the electrical room. Charon 3 is quiet. The screen glows, but the pulsing heartbeat isn't there. Mac's unplugged it. Whatever was in there of Ken's Force-6, his essence, his soul, had been harnessed, is released. Mac says he'll tell the government agents the experiment is a failure, pack everything up, another ostensible disgrace. Only, this wasn't a failure, or at least, it hadn't felt like it in the moment, but then they'd been unable to verify what it was. Could they trust what they'd seen? Now that it was over, faith was waning. Perhaps they'd been wrong, tricked by their own emotions and the suffering of a frightened backward child. Was it a hallucination? Or had they, briefly, momentarily, held a bridge from life to death? Had science, psychology and spirituality converged, if only for a day? Had they made a breakthrough? Not gonna lie, I loved this story. It built a sense of suspense from the outset. All the ominous shenanigans really prime me to believe that there was some heinous horror ending brewing. For example, the scene is really set for a mad scientist willing to go to all lengths for his experiments. A creepy setting, a far-flung place, an eerie building and rooms. I mean, an operating room across a lab? Hello. The blend of pseudo-science and paranormal horror, not to mention all the references to the Greek underworld. We've got a guardian dog called Cerberus, named for the 3-headed goodest boy in all of Hades. The whole thing is called Operation Styx, the River Styx being what souls need to cross to get from the world of the living to the world of the dead. There are machines intended to follow Ken from one side of death to the other, just as Charon the ferryman takes souls across the River Styx. I don't know if we're just now in a day and age where horror, shock and awe are almost par for the course, so with all the death references I was expecting things like Mac turning out to be a murderous maniac, or Ken never being truly sick, Mac just faking it to placate Saunders' ethics, or something gory or paranormal going down in the climax, like Nikki goes down the dark tunnel after Ken and gets possessed by a demon. And don't get me wrong, all those things would be really cool, awesome big story twists. But the part of me that loves a happy ending was kind of relieved that although Mac was a little bit of a mad scientist wanting to push the boundaries of what's possible, he was still fundamentally good. He chose not to keep an entrapped soul for his own selfish research reasons. I was also relieved that Ken's illness was real and there was nothing nefarious in his passing. His part in the experiment truly didn't shorten his life further. It was cool to to see the foreshadowing and feel the suspense build, question everyone's motives, and yet not have the peak be gore and horror. The end result of the experiment was something the characters couldn't fully comprehend, but they understood that if they'd potentially trapped someone's consciousness, not just their energy, then it's got to be released, no matter how scientifically curious they were about this breakthrough. And I think that was more impactful for little old me. In a media world where I'm conditioned to expect climaxes trying to get one up with extreme twists, I was truly caught off guard, and in a way that left my nervous system relatively intact, which I appreciated. Thank you, and that's all from me.